Remember this dustbin? Yeah, it's finally getting some paint. Hello skill model lovers, today is the day. We're continuing the Tamiya Simovente M40 build and it's time to tackle the interior. But first, let's disassemble the model. I get it, you guys really enjoy watching other modelers struggle. Well, you won't be disappointed in this video. I managed to knock over a bottle of primer, ruining my cutting mat. I broke the sandbag during this assembly and before I knew it, I ended up in never-ending paint chipping hell. But without further ado, let's get started. First up, priming. I gave the whole interior a coat of red-brown oxide primer. I'm not entirely sure about the historical accuracy of that choice, but since it was the only color I had, it'll have to do. I like to build up the layers slowly to keep the coverage even, and to make sure there's no paint buildup that could accidentally flood the surface and hide those tiny details. Details, I hear you say? Yes, I know. This is a very basic kit without any modifications. But let's move on. It turned out quite dark. I guess that's a good thing, and I'll probably use the same primer when priming the whole model. With the primer in place, we've survived round 1. Time to move out of our comfort zone and lock in that base coat. And now, time to drop the next mix. To my knowledge, the Simovente had a light grey interior. Since my reference is a restored vehicle, I decided to mix a color that leaned a bit more towards white, something that would pop more, especially considering that most of it would hardly be visible once everything was close up. I brewed up a mix of stone grey and matte white from Ammo's new Adam line and immediately dropped it onto the model. I didn't want to flood the surface here either, so I slowly built up the layers in circular motions. This way, it didn't look too white, but had more of a creamy tone. With the base coat on, it was time to paint the interior details. Yes, you saw that right. Precision engineering at its finest. I couldn't even get a piece of paper in there. Not very tactical. Anyway, back to the details. I started by painting the seats in an olive green color. I added a few drops of water and retarder for better flow and slowly built up multiple thin layers until I was satisfied. For the rest of the interior, I used a mix of blacks, greys and metallics. Keep in mind that my reference Simovente is a restored vehicle, so the colors are a bit more vivid than they probably were during the war. Also, much of it will be toned down later during weathering anyway. The gun in the reference looked almost new, not too shiny, so I gave it a base coat of smoke black. And yes, I know what you're thinking. After all that bling in the last episode, this level of restraint is practically character development at this point. And before I could overthink it, it was time to lock it all in. Fast. Now that all my Picasso level work was safely sealed, it was time to ruin it with some washes. Interiors are always tricky. Light base coats make every mistake stand out like a disco ball in a monastery. No pressure here. So, instead, I mixed a soft brownish grey oil wash to keep things subtle, which, let's be honest, isn't something we do often around here. Remember, it's a restored vehicle, so the color shouldn't look overdone. I started by covering the whole interior with a very diluted overall wash. Just enough to give the base tone a used look to unify all the highly detailed painting work. Joking, of course. In any case, it's a messy step, but oil paints are very forgiving. If it looks bad, you can wipe it off with thinner and pretend it never happened. Now let's dial down the chaos and add some precision. It's time for the pin wash. After letting it dry for a day, it was time for some precision work. I mixed a simple wash using sepia oil paint and carefully went over all the small details. I always enjoy this step. It gives the model character fast. Using a long brush is very convenient for pin washes. It holds more paint and allows for precise application. It's a slow and steady process, the kind of thing that makes you question your life choices halfway through, but looks great when it's done. Once all the details were done, I went back and cleaned up the excess with a brush lightly damped with thinner. Always wipe it on a napkin first, otherwise you'll just remove the entire wash. So that's the progress so far. Time to bring it to life with some dry brushing and highlights and pretend I know what subtle is. Bonus tip: always save some paint from your original mix. It comes in handy more often than you think. In this case, I used it to highlight the details with dry brushing, picking out rivets and bolts along the way. This step can be a bit controversial, but since it's the interior, I think I can get away with pushing the effect a little. I also dry brushed the seats with a yellow-green tone to give them more of a fabric feel. And you know what? It finally started to come together. For once, things were actually going right. For the first time in hours, I wasn't fixing mistakes, I was building momentum. Every stroke felt right, every color just clicked. Maybe, just maybe, I was finally getting the hang of this. Time to keep that momentum going. Nothing can stop me now. Things were going great. I was feeling optimistic and starting adding more details here and there. I even added glazes to the seats with a greenish tone to unify everything a bit more. It was also time to work on the main barrel. I added a light dry brush with a brighter tone and gave the barrel a metallic finish using a graphite pencil. And I even did multiple runs of glazes to break up the monotone look of the MRX. I was in the zone and nothing could go wrong. I was even already putting on some shading with oil paints. After all these good vibes, it was time to cool down. Surely, this couldn't last forever. I was getting myself mentally ready for the most defining step in scale modeling, the one we all fear, the point of no return. You know what I'm talking about, chipping. I made such good progress. What could possibly go wrong? Let's do this. I started with the utmost precision, full tactical concentration mode, which for me is already an achievement, but my patience was starting to wear thin. Despite of my lack of patience, I was already making some good progress and was getting more confident, maybe a bit too confident. We all know that we need to stop when things already look good, but I pushed through anyway. I mean, it looked great, so why stop now, right? Let's just say things escalated quickly. I took a step back, looked at my work, and yeah, it was way too much. I should have stopped earlier. They always say, take a step back before moving on. Of course I didn't. I had completely ruined the interior. Alright, enough crying. Time to fix this like a man. Remember when I said to always save a bit of your base coat? This is one of those moments. A real lifesaver. I thinned the light grey mix to about 90% and gently misted the interior. Careful not to overspray my hand-painted details. Still far from perfect, but we're not there yet. I still had to finish the other seats. I quickly mixed up some oil paints and began fading with dark brown and buff tones. I'd also completely destroyed the shadows I'd so precisely added earlier during the washing stage. So I went back in, added some fade to bring them back, and redid a few pin washes on the damaged areas. Man, all that work, just barely visible when the model is finished. At least you and I know how it looked. But wait, what's that? I didn't want that small paint blob to ruin my day. Luckily it was an easy fix. A quick swipe with a cotton swab and some thinner and I was back in business. Time for the final touches. I mixed a wash from different earth pigments and let it settle into the corners. Not too much though, just enough for that lift-in look. Although a bit out of place, the reference showed a dusty barrel, so I gave it a pigment wash as well. Then removed the excess with a makeup sponge. My revenge on the wifey for trying to steal my shiny tracks in the last episode. For the finishing touch, I used some graphite to bring out that subtle metallic sheen we all love. And that's it, my friends. Although it turned out better than I expected, it was still quite an undertaking. Maybe a bit too much for something you barely see after everything is closed up. Next time, I might make my life easier and pick a subject without an interior. Or just glue the hatches shut. Still, it was good practice. Do you guys actually bother with interiors or do you skip this madness entirely? I'm really curious how many of you actually go through all this pain just to close it all up again. Share your stories in the comments. Now that the interior is done, the real challenge has only just begun. Hit subscribe so you can join me in the next video where I probably find new ways to mess everything up. Because apparently, that's my thing now. I guess the battles we all fight inside are sometimes the hardest, but also the most rewarding. Man, this is getting emotional. Thanks for watching and see you all in the next one.